Hello, and welcome to the Arts Exchange, the Power of Words author panel. My name is Theresa Davis, and today my guest is Shaki G, the poet. The Arts Exchange, the Southeast Community Cultural Arts Center, doing business at the Arts Exchange, receives support from Fulton County Arts and Culture under the guidance of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, Georgia Council for the Arts under the guidance of the State of Georgia legislators, and support from the National Endowment for the Arts. The Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta, through a Place to Perform grant, Threshold Foundation, Fidelity Charitables, the estate of Dr. Doris Derby, Foodwell Alliance, Peach State Health Plan, Schwab, and Shifting Energy support all of our programming. Support is also provided by individual donors and business donors. We encourage you to become a supporter of the Arts Exchange. And welcome, Shaki G, the poet. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well. Remind the interworld what part of the world you are in right now.
I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the United States.
Ah, yes, Pittsburgh. I, I don't know, has there ever been a National Poetry Slam in Pittsburgh?
Yes, there has actually, and I have been the Grand Slam champ twice for the last 2 years.
Okay, excellent. I don't think I've got, because this is after PSI exploded, right?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I know I've been to Pittsburgh, but it's a blur. It's a blur. And then COVID didn't help. All of our memories have readjusted themselves in so many different ways. I can't even keep up anymore. But I do have some questions for you. So we are here to talk about your book, In Lieu of Flowers. I have been enjoying it. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to see so many poets taking their words and putting them in the hands of other people, because I think that one of the reasons I love this art form is so much is that you never know the power your words may have on someone else who has that same experience but didn't have quite the words to say it and resonated with your words. Can you tell me or us, what is your inspiration? What was your inspiration behind In Lieu of Flowers, and what prompted you to write this collection?
I had been writing for a while, and I just wanted to put my experiences out there, like you said, for other people who may have gone through the same things. But also, I have to give a shout out to Marissa Prada with Red or Green Books, who she's one of those people who are making a lot of people's dreams come true and publishing new authors, new poets. And I had been to a few open mics with her, and she had invited me to publish with her. So it kind of made me want to get the collection together, make it into a full collection. It had started out as 4 different chapbooks that I was just doing for the fun of it. But when she asked me to put together a full collection, I actually had to organize my thoughts and put them into sections and get it in the book. So
Were you able to sort of seamlessly take those 4 different things and kind of merge them? And if so, how did you do that?
So what I did was I kind of laid it all out. I printed them all out, laid it all out on the bed, and started putting them into categories. And so the book ended up with 4 sections, because I tend to write about a lot of different things, and that's where it first started. Because I would do slams in Pittsburgh and perform online, and what I noticed is that people started putting me into categories. So they would say, "Oh, you're a Black poet, or you are an LGBTQ poet, or you speak about mental health." And I didn't like being cut up like that, because I write about a lot of different things. So
Yeah.
each section focuses on the different titles people gave me. So the section 1 focuses on my so-called Black poetry, about the Black experiences and things that I've dealt with. Section 2 has to deal with family and relationships. Section 3 deals with the things I write about LGBTQ, and then section 4, mental health and issues like that. And originally, I wanted it, like I said, it was 4 different chapbooks, and I was going to put the whole collection together called "And," because we are more than one thing, and we should always highlight all the different things. Um, and that turned into In Lieu of Flowers. Um, Because when you go to a funeral or you see the memorial, they say, instead of honoring the person this way, instead of giving them flowers, find a different way to honor that person. And I think each of these sections gives honor to something that I have dealt with or gone through. So that's why I ended up naming the book In Lieu of Flowers, because I believe it's another way to give honor to the things I've done and dealt with in my life.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. I remember when I was coming up in the slam community and being kind of pegged as putting those different little boxes. It really makes you uncomfortable, you
Yeah.
know. But back then we didn't have all the language that we have now. Um, and I think that has actually helped us kind of talk about ourselves in a more cohesive way. But every once in a while, I still run into those weird, and it shouldn't bother me. But I also think that we should be smarter than, you know, maybe everybody else. But when I get asked to, like sometimes I'll get asked to do a protest about something, and the organizer will feel it necessary to say, uh, um, we're not queer poetry this time. And I'm like, I'm a professional. Why would you even come at me like that? And even if I'm talking about my blackness or my queerness or every time I open my mouth, all of those things are coming out of my mouth. All of
Right.
those people are the same people saying that. So it really gets frustrating. And I've stopped dealing with a couple of folks just because of that alone. It bothers me in a way where I'm not gonna flip a table mad at you, but it's just like in that moment you've made me invisible or cut some part of me off, and clearly you don't know me or you don't want to know me, right? So, but I'm working on it. My anger issues have my petty button got flipped in 2020, and I haven't been able to put it back on right.
Same, same.
So different things set me off in different ways, you know. Um, how is your what is your writing process, and do you have different processes for what you are preparing to do?
Absolutely. And you get this question a lot when you talk to poets, right? Like, what is it like? And I won't say. I know everyone wants to say I sit down for an hour every day and I get my coffee. It doesn't happen. But it depends. Sometimes it comes from a prompt that I heard or a situation that I'm going through. Things that move me deeply. 2020. I know a lot in this book. I do talk about like police brutality and situations like that. Things that just kind of hit me deeply in the news or in society. Um, when I'm just sitting back and wanting to read, one thing that I do is I kind of Google like facts, either about like nature or animals or things like that. And then I kind of use them to explain the situation I'm going through. And so you'll see that a lot in the book. For example, I have one, I learned that elephants, the way that they're growing up is different. They have adapted to poachers. And I use that to talk about my body adapting because I'm not able to have children, not to get too personal. But I was able to take those two things, that fact that I found and an issue in my life, and kind of put them together. So when I really don't have a writing prompt and I'm just sitting back and I want to read, that's usually where I start. Um, it's just trying to put two parallel things together in a way that most people wouldn't see it.
Okay, all right. I like that. I like that. I like that. So, are there any poems in lieu of flowers that you hold in a special place? Like I think that I have. Like I've written a lot of poetry. I performed a lot of poetry, but there are. I'm going to say I have 6 poems that stand out to me as some of my best work. And I don't know what I ate that morning, or I don't know what was in that Powerade or whatever drink I drank, but it was like nailed it almost perfectly on the first time. The form was something that was really unique and I had never heard done before. Um, and they became these poems where that people you by, right? So do you have any of that type of poem in this collection that you
um,
look at it, you go, look at my baby. That's my baby. I wrote that.
it's not baby. Um, so I have there's two ways that I can answer that question. I have a few pieces in there that emotionally meant a lot to me. Example would be there's a poem in there about called Laramie, and it was in regards to the death of Matthew Shepard. That is something that, when I was very young, really affected me. And likewise, a poem about Emmett Till, because that's another situation in my life when I was young that just deeply affected me and kind of changed the way I saw the world. Um, on the flip side, just talking about writing, there are poems in there that I really like. I have My Brother's Burden, which I think, at least for me, I think was written very well. And then I have a poem about my mother, which kind of does both sides. I think I really like the writing on it, but the emotions behind it as well were, deep
Okay.
there.
Okay. Let's talk about slam for a minute. Are they having? Are there any slams coming up in Pittsburgh soon?
I believe we have one next month. I haven't decided if I'm going to do it or not.
Yeah.
I just did a slam this past Friday with Versed Inc., um, which was pretty fun. So I've just been kind of looking for um, different ones to kind of get out of the Pittsburgh bubble,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah. Are you
Um,
doing them virtually or in person?
the one with Versed Inc. was virtual.
Ah.
It's
How do you
run by.
find that? How do you find virtual slamming? To me, it's very. I did it a couple of times in 2020 when everything shut down. I was like, well, I'm already at home. I may as well play Hollywood Squares. But it's very weird because I make a lot of movements with my arms. So like when I rehearse for slam, there are certain things that, especially if I have to shorten. We all have that poem that's like you're not really short enough for slam,
Right.
but I have to do certain things to remind myself what version of the poem I'm doing.
Mhm.
Um, so it was really tricky for me to do that in a chair. And then when I figured out how to do it standing up with a tripod, I realized that I also stomp a lot, I guess. And you don't get to see when the image shifts. And thank God I was wearing pants. But um, but yeah, so it was really tricky for me. How do you find that experience? And do you feel like you're able to connect, or do you have to figure out how to connect differently?
I think it is a form of connecting differently. So um, although the last 2 years have been very good for me with slam, I started slamming during the pandemic. So I started virtually.
Okay.
But then within the last year, I have gotten in person in Pittsburgh and on a stage, and I've actually had a few like paid gigs to perform as well. And I have to say, I love being on the stage. I love being able to connect with the audience. Um, it gives you that energy where you can kind of improvise within the poem. So you may have written it one way, but you can improvise and kind of connect with the people. Whereas when I'm online, it's kind of just like, I don't want to say transactional, because I always like, connecting with people through any medium,
Yeah.
but you don't really get that kind of, able to know how the audience is feeling until after you
Yeah.
perform.
Yeah. I mean, it's this weird thing, and I tried to I kind of break it down in my brain. It's like, okay, when you're performing on stage and you're making eye contact, you're literally maybe making eye contact with one or two people, right?
Yeah,
But it feels like you're making eye contact with everybody in the room, right?
right.
So in the zooms and on those little in any of these, it's so hard. Like, who am I looking at? Who do I? Why can't all y'all's eyes be in the same place?
Right.
So I often don't know what to do with that, but I'm trying to do better, and I'm trying to get better. But I've taken, I don't compete as much anymore, um, and I've decided that I think my strength moving forward is creating spaces for other people to be able to compete. So I do have a slam coming up here in um, on the 23rd of September. So I have an in-person slam, and it's 500 total, 300 for first. I forgot how I broke it down, but people get money. And I do a big one in April for National Poetry Month. That's $1,000 to the winner. So yeah, if you make plans to take a mini tour and you happen to be in Atlanta, Georgia, around the middle of April next year, towards the end part, you should consider. I'm just saying.
Absolutely.
The first time I did it, I made it invitational, but this time it'll be first come, first serve. So you register, you in. Um, so yeah, so that's where I think my relationship with slam has changed in that way. I still do some coaching. Have you ever coached, or are you under the tutelage of a coach right now?
Um, Not technically. Um, Sometimes I reach out. There is a slam coach, Coach Josh Smalls. I don't know if you know him. He's out of Carolina. Um, and I like to reach out to him and kind of bother him every now and again, because he's an amazing poet. He's worked with slam teams throughout the years.
Yeah.
Um, and then I have my mentor who told me to tell you hi. His name's AJ Houston. He said that. He said, I know Theresa, you tell her I said hi. But he's kind of been my mentor with poetry in general, because he's also
Okay.
someone else who writes amazing. So, he looks over some of my work and kind of says, "Oh, I know what you were doing there, but what if you did this instead?" And so I'm happy to have them.
Yeah. Do you go to poetry workshops and um, or those kind of spaces to help generate ideas for what you're coming up with? Have you been to any interesting ones lately, or what's the most interesting prompt you've gotten recently?
I do go to a lot of workshops to kind of trigger different types of writing, because sometimes the thoughts that you have in your head, people have other ones that you wouldn't have thought of. Um, but yes, there's two that I like to go to, and actually one is happening right now, and I didn't go. But there's a poet named Ray Jane out of New York City. Used to do a lot of work with New Eurekan poets, and now I think this one is called Cycles. But she comes up with great prompts that you wouldn't even think of. A lot of them are ekphrastic, in the sense where she found a piece of artwork and then came up with a theme to go with that artwork, which I think is really cool. And then another one that I go to a lot it's with, I'm gonna get it mixed up. I think it's called Six Poetry. Kelly Mary McAllister runs it out of Toronto, and
Okay.
she just has really great options. Her last one that I went to was about politics, but not in the sense that I would normally look at it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really good workshop as well.
I will say one thing that did make me impressed me as far as our artist community is that during the pandemic, I had the opportunity to um, see poets that I hadn't seen in years because a tournament hadn't happened in their town, right? Or I haven't had a tour in their town. So it was great to be able to be like, my friend in Abu Dhabi is like, you want to do the slam in Abu Dhabi? I'm like, I've never been to Abu Dhabi, of course. So like, you get this like idea that like, oh, I'm international now. And you can say that, and it's true, because you are literally, you have this is the true form of accessibility, right? I've had the honor of having people in my workshops who had never, or in my open mics, who had never who hadn't been able to go out to a physical open mic in years because the buildings aren't accessible,
Right.
and they want to share, but they don't have any space. So I had a lot of triggering feelings when I was, uh, going back into when the old, real world opened up because people wanted me to put Java back in person,
Mhm.
and I could do that, but I can't do both, right? So I'm like, do I give up this new community that we've created to, I can't reconcile it. So, if I
Right.
ever do another in-person open mic other than one I do here, I would call it something else, but I would have to maintain that online presence, I think, until people just stop coming. Um, it just feels so rude to build this 2-year relationship to be like, deuces. So
Right.
I don't have the heart for that.
Right. And I know I keep name dropping, but
Oh,
a
good.
lot for me, especially during the pandemic, again, Marissa Prada, she has a platform called The Word Is Right. And they have events like every day of the week. Poetry events, open mics, workshops, readings, things like that. So if anyone else, is looking for a community, that's a great place to start. The Word Is Right, WRITE. And I'm very happy. I found a nice poetry family within that, but also, trying to I don't like to box myself in. So,
Right.
although I do a bulk of mine with the word is right, I do try to go out and, that's how I got to Java Speaks. I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, no, it's real, and I think that's my problem is once because all of my literary programming here at my job were able to translate virtually. Yeah, I was at home, but I still had jobs. I had to like work, so it's like so I couldn't go. And people are like, it's 3 p.m. I'm like, oh, I could go, and they're like, wait, you live in California? Oh, boo, I can't go. So working out time zones was a trip.
Right.
um, and it's still hard for me to navigate and try to be in all the places that I want to be in. But I'm gonna get better. That's one of my promises I've made to myself is that I'm gonna the virtual places that I want to go. I'm gonna try to at least hit them once a month, even if they have, especially if they have multiple things happening.
Mhm.
Just because I do like hearing other perspectives from other places in other parts of the world. Even if it's 2 states over. And I think that's important for us to grow as writers and poets as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I know many are reading your book, but are there any books that you are reading right now to help inspire you on your path?
Yes, I do have a few books that I've been reading. Again, AJ Houston's Book of Black. Here, look, I'll even do a little bit of advertising for you. I got AJ Houston's The Lost Book of Black. It's part of a trilogy. This guy, look, 496 pages of poetry, right?
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So, needless to say, I have not gotten through that whole book.
Yeah.
Um, but then I got someone. I went to the New York City Poetry Fest. Her name was Alexis Patrick. Let me see if I can
Okay.
find the book. Watch me not be able to.
It's all good. Can't, but yeah. No,
Yeah.
I went to a bookstore the other day and I had to have a talk with myself because for some it was like you know how you go sometimes to Costco or Sam Club and it's try all the snacks day. That's what it felt like, and I was like, I cannot. You cannot buy all of these books.
Yeah.
Not buy all of these books. Um, and then I was like, oh wait, I have a library card. I can check some of these books out, and not have that part of my guilt on me. And then, my library card expired. Georgia is serious about their library cards. I called and I was like, can you just say like, no, you need to come up here and show us some mail.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
still? But you don't have to do that to get a gun. Oh, I'm sorry. I went way off base over there.
That part.
How? I am excited to hear some of your poetry, but you do have one question that's in the chat right now from the internet world. Do you have any advice for new slammers? As you yourself are pretty new to slam, what
Yeah.
advice would you give?
Um. Hmm. So the best advice that I was given is not to change yourself for other people. And if you're going to slam, be yourself. You don't have to be like everyone else that is slamming. And this is something that Coach Jaw reminds me a lot. Um, I know a lot of times in the slam world lately, it's been just people kind of yelling, and like it's the same cadence all the time. It's the same um, topics and things like that. And it's okay to stand out, especially when you are being judged. Um, but also at the same time, knowing that you have to set yourself apart, you do have to know what you're up against. So I say to watch a lot of slam. I watch a lot of the slams that are on like YouTube. If I can make it to one in person, I try to go. Um, and you have to put your ego aside. I had a friend recently that was signing up for slam that asked for some advice, and um, she wanted to slam a piece about her passing grandmother. And my thing was just, you have to make sure that you're willing to have someone give you a score on something that means that much to you. Because even though the scores are not, it doesn't represent how good or bad poetry is, because there is no good or bad poetry. You're putting your
Yeah,
emotions out there.
yeah,
But in the slam world, they are affixing a number to what you put out there, and you have to make sure that you're okay with that.
yeah. And I mean, I slammed for 12, 14, yeah, I don't even know, long time. And one of the things I think that made it so fun for me until it got really toxic, and I was like, wow, these people don't know why they're here, or I missed a memo. I don't know. But one of the things for me was the ability to have a sense of humor with myself. Right, I inject a little bit of humor in most of my poetry, and that is a tool that I use to make the audience make that one sound that means ka-ching. You just won the slam, and it works. Um, but um, but but um, but I've seen people put their heart and put their struggle out in the world and not be ready for that kind of feedback, you
Right.
know. And I've seen people who are really good at writing poetry, had all this potential to play in this game, but it's a game that's not meant for everybody. I think I'm a healthy competitor. I believe heavily in irony. I once did a slam poem where I got a negative 0.3
Oh wow.
and a 10 for the same poem. And it made my heart joyful because that man went through a lot of struggle to write all them zeros where he could just put 1 0 and it'd have been the same thing, right? So
Right.
you so regardless of what and my humor tells me that regardless of what you think you felt about that poem felt something in you. And thank you for this negative 0.03. Um, because that was a lot of energy.
Right.
Yeah, but I have a sense of humor. And I've seen that happen to other people, and they don't have a sense of humor about it. They want to confront the judges. I'm like, that's not part of the game. We're not trying to have lawsuits with poets. Do you hear the word poet in poetry? We don't do that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I think you have to have a certain kind of skin, a certain sense of comfort in yourself, and a sense of humor, in order to and not take yourself so seriously. I really started applying the 4 agreements to myself, and especially that one like you can't take anything personally.
Right.
We live in a time where people think they know everything about you because they can Google it or they saw it or somebody told them. Those kind of relationships that we used to build where we like in constant contact with each, they hardly exist. So I can't afford to take everything personally. That's me crying a lot. I don't like crying. It's not my best look. Um, are you working on any projects right now? Do you have a new project coming out or
Um,
that you're working on?
I don't. I have like little things that I'm working on with people. Some like audio things. And possibly another book. I'm not sure where that is going. Like a collaborative book. But right now I'm just trying to connect with people and you know read as much as I can. Because if I do put another project out, I don't want it to be the same. Which you see a lot with writers where it's just the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
And my fear is I don't want to fall into that rut. So,
yeah. And I think there are certain keys to make sure that that doesn't happen, and that includes all the things you're doing, going to different spaces, hearing different voices, being inspired by different writing prompts and workshops that you take. Reading. I know so many people who tell me they don't read, and I'm like, ooh, how we doing? Mm-mm. If you don't read books, who you expected to read yours? Come on.
right.
Um, so yeah, so I think that those are all healthy ways for a writer to keep themselves engaged, right? And for me, it's like I've kind of segued from I do still write poetry, but I have this book of I'm not sure what it would it it's queer but not erotic enough because every time I send it to somebody, they're like, more sex. And I'm like, hold up, what? Wait, I haven't been here long. Let me warm up. What? But so I've been gravitating more to the 2 novels. I'm going to call them that. I think one's probably more like a novella, and then a novel that I've been kind of messing with for the last few years. So I think with my creativity gets stifled. And for me, because I write about so much social commentary, it's depressing to write the same poem 15 times. I have literally made a career the last 3 years reading poems that are 20 years old and still relevant.
Right.
That upsets me. And it doesn't upset me that I can't write about a new way. I said what I said. I needed that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But why are we still talking about this? Right. So when my brain gets fogged up and that kind of stuff, I have to switch creative gears.
Yeah.
Sometimes that looks like visual art. Sometimes that looks like, changing my genre. What does it look like for you when you get in that space? What is your what other art form do you gravitate to when you need to like be like, oh, I need to chill out for a second. Everything's a lot.
So I normally gravitate towards like sketching, and it's not something I put into the world. I'm not like Picasso or anything like that. But I do like to kind of draw and get my mind out of that space. Um, I just listen to a lot of music and some, like I said, again, just instead of worrying about what I'm putting out into the world, pay attention to what other people are putting out into the world.
Yeah.
Um, because even though writing is cathartic for me,
Yeah.
um, you kind of find yourself healing on the other side of that as well when you're reading other people's uh, journey as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Out there in the interworld, if you all have more questions, please put them in the chat. And right now, we are going to hear some poetry by Shaki G. All right. I'm going to let you have it screen to yourself.
all right. So I did reference a few poems while we were speaking, so I will um, read those. I'm going to start off with a pretty heavy piece, um, but it's one of those pieces that means a lot to me. Um, and we were talking about social commentary, so this is kind of part of that first section of Black experiences. And this piece was based on a true story. I grew up in a smaller town um, in Western New York, and we were very close to a sundown town. And my job forced me to go out there, and I stopped for directions, and the situation happened. So that's where this piece comes from. Um, it's called Shotgun Salutation. I had always thought the first time I stared down the barrel of a gun, I would be on both sides. Guess I thought I'd hate myself long before anyone else had the chance to. Forgot I wear this X on my chest every day for people who scream 88 while carrying a 12 gauge. All I wanted was directions. But I heard the gun cock before I reached the question, and some excuse of a man put me in his sights like a James Bond credit. Tell me, how fast you can go when your mind is racing? Your heart is going a mile a minute, but your legs have gone numb. Just two concrete bricks destined to be a foundation. I wish I had the bravado of Emmett, the will to run of Harriet. Damn it. If anything, my body chose to channel Rosa and decide not to move, at least until I felt the tension of the trigger pull. Cut through the night sky like hot metal. I will not die here. I'm not sure if I ran or flew, but my next memory was a mirage of red and blue. The cop says, "Do you know how fast you were going?" I thought, not fast enough to outrun history, but I, blessed to be tongue-tied instead of neck-tied, replied, "Please, I just want to make it home." See, where I'm from, people like me gamble anytime they leave their house, drive up the road. These towns don't wait for the sun to go down for their hate to build up, don't care about the placement of the Mason-Dixon. They don their Confederate flag. Say, all jokes aside, fuck heritage. They just hate my kind. They have no reason for it. And to think, I thought I would be on both sides of a gun. Thought I could ever learn to hate myself that much. All right, so it's another poem that I reference. It's called My Brother's Burden, about police brutality. As kids, we joked about giving free tickets to the gun show whenever we raised our arms. But now, my brother's body is a fully stocked armory. You can hear the boom of cannons in his voice, grand finale of fireworks in his laughter, his heart trigger happy, chest an arsenal of pride. So when he leaves the house, I'm afraid anyone will mistake his melanin for gunpowder, any gesture seen as reaching for a gun. His eyes turn gunmetal black when scared. It is hard to conceal his pain. I've seen the way America looks at him, like a wet dream, call him fetish and pray. My brother is a moving target, walking excuse, a closed coffin ready for wake. I wish I could paint my brother any color than chalk outline or mural, camouflage him into this world. Wish I could put a safety on his back instead of a bullseye. Remind you, he is someone's father, son, uncle, brother, instead of another bastard. Because after all the things my brother can be, America will always be the gun. Hatred, the bullet that eviscerates my brother's temple, turns his favorite streets into memorial and shrine, exchange his bright future for candlelight vigils. Maybe someday, America will stay silent in its holster, will not see my brothers as a weapon, say they feared for their lives. And ain't that ironic? The way I fear for mine? Excuse me. Um, there was another piece that I had referred to. Sorry, I sing when I am. All right. So this is the piece that I wrote in regards to elephants. So again, just looking up facts, I found this out. Recent studies show in areas where elephants are poached and killed for their tusks to make ivory, elephants have evolved so that 50% of females are now born without tusks. The trauma caused by humans has forced evolution. I stand in the mirror and wonder what parts of me my daughter will shed to survive. Part of me fears maybe she has given up life at all, and therefore she will never come to be. Afraid of all the trauma I have faced in this life. I think of my Uncle Bud, born blind, and I wonder if maybe he didn't want to see the injustices of this world, or those born deaf, if they decided the screams for freedom were far too deafening. It seems we carry more than babies in our wombs, which is to say, I am pregnant with grief. Some days I carry lonely in my uterus as if it only belongs to me. I feel it grow and kick, remind me of its presence. I often wonder if it's too late to abort the pain. Pray for a stillbirth. I wonder how many times elephants had to swallow fear before it became a fetus. If a mother looked at her tuskless daughter and worried about how she would fight back before realizing she wouldn't have to, how she couldn't change the world, so she gave birth to a new one. How I cannot change the world, but I'm afraid there isn't a new one coming. All right. And do I have time for one more? I'm just going to say yes. Hello. So, that piece, Laramie, that I was talking about, I will read that and then I will give the stage back to Theresa. I just got to find it here. I'm sorry. And I really, I like this piece not only for the poem itself, even though it may not be like my best poem, but in the book, the formatting of it um, is in the shape of a cross, which is one of the things that stood out to me when they found Matthew Shepard. He was tied up in such a way. Um, so it was a big deal for me. So in the book, it shows up on the page as a cross. She reaches out to hold my hand. I recoil into myself. Do you remember that scene from Brokeback? Remember that night in Laramie? But also in BFE, New York, where man, placed on display like scarecrow, tied to fence like Jesus, praying to God for forgiveness before becoming martyr. I often am not comfortable in my gay. Have never kissed with my eyes closed, always looking for the blow. I wear my heart on my sleeve and cover it with hoodies. She tells me she doesn't understand how shepherd turns me sheep, why I leave the closet, believe my skeletons behind. I have no answer. My wingspan is too short for crucifixion, always afraid to become victim. I've stopped questioning God if the answer is that night in Laramie. Thank you.
Woo. Thank you so much. Thank you. I can't wait to finish this. I actually did read that piece, and you just made me remember something. I used to do concrete poems a lot. You know why I stopped?
Let's hear it.
It's not funny, but it's kind of funny. So I was a second and third grade teacher for a long time, right? And I thought it would be really, really fun for the kids to do some concrete poetry. Make your poem about the sun and the shape of the sun. That kind of stuff. I had a kid have such. This is when the first time I learned that. Wait, oh wait, everybody don't like the same stuff. Like that kind of fun. That kid broke down so bad, had such a fit because of the raindrop and the shape of the raindrop, and it wasn't what he wanted, and he couldn't figure it out, and it was so much, and I was like, I'm never making these kids do that again. It will always be an option. It will not be a lesson, that inspired me because I was like, now I want to go back and look at some of the stuff that I did because I'm not a great. You sketch and draw. I don't draw that much, but I can make shapes, and different things like that. But that was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. You have flowers in the chat. Um, Marissa says, "Yay, Shaki G." So you have folks checking us out now. If anybody in the interworld, if you have any questions, now is the time to put your questions in the chat. I am going to ask, what do you see? Are you going to be, where are you performing next in case people are listening where you are, or if somebody's maybe taking a trip, in the physical world, and then tell us some of the virtual things that you have coming up.
Well, in the physical world, and actually, if you would like to come, I think you should. Tickets are not that expensive for the event, but there's a New Mexico Poetry Festival, or Poetry Summit, I'm sorry, that is going to be the weekend of September the 8th. So I will be traveling out to New Mexico for that. And I have a few performances as part of that. And then that Sunday, I will be performing with Tesoro, which is a women's only organization that I'm a part of. That's ran by Stacy Dyson. I'm not sure if you have met her. She's an amazing poet. She's also a poet laureate. I want to say in California somewhere. I'm so bad. I never know where people are.
Hey, is it real? That's what I want to know. I'm just kidding. Is it real?
Right.
But yeah. Okay, cool.
So in person, that's what I'm doing. Right now, I don't have any virtual features set up. They always come last minute. Like
Yeah.
I just, yeah, but so I'm sure I will have some things. This Sunday, it's not poetry related, but it kind of is. I have a podcast that I've been doing for LGBTQ persons. We're going to be talking about drag culture, and having a few drag performers on to kind of explain it to us. I recently met someone, and it was weird for me. That was female, and they were a drag queen, and I didn't know that was a thing. And so I realized I'm actually really bad at being gay. If you said like, I don't know a lot of the things that you should know as a gay person. But
nobody does. We all just kind of stumble around bumping into stuff.
So I wanted, we're gonna, have a few drag performers on to kind of explain the culture and things like that, and it's associated with poetry in the sense that the anthology. I keep pulling out books out loud. It's an LGBTQ anthology. So
Okay.
people of the community who put their poetry together. Um, so the podcast is named after this. It's the Out Loud Poetry Podcast. Um, and we talk about the different uh, issues facing LGBTQ persons,
Yeah.
and knowledge of different things like this. So
Okay. Okay. No, I used to be a drag king, so you know, but I think my first introduction to drag was a movie called Victor Victoria. Have you ever seen it?
I've heard of it. I have not seen it.
It is hard to find, and I used to have a copy, and somebody stole it. And when I find them, but it was a woman playing a man playing a woman.
Okay.
So she was a drag queen, but she was a woman, but she had this drag king persona as well. So I mean that's how my first introduction. So I was like, oh yeah, anybody could just like make themselves spruced up and be fancy.
Right.
But I think as our culture has evolved and changed, so many different nuances have come up, and but I do like my drag king. My drag king name is Boots Knocking.
There
Um,
you go.
yes, I was young. I was young when I did all that. So, but
And
congratulations! That all sounds
right?
so fun. Have you
And-
ever done? Have you ever done any performed at any drag or burlesque shows? I don't do it. I do poetry at some of those shows as well as drag kings. But have you ever? I do poetry at a burlesque show here often. It's called Tease Tuesday, and actually I think I'm performing there in September. Um, but it's really fun, and burlesque is so smart and clever. I love burlesque. I love drag, and I love when people can go so far outside of the box and make something that I've never seen before. That makes me just that puts a smile on your face, right? There's so many things that just don't put a smile on your face. So I love those spaces. So I'm excited. That sounds exciting. Wish I could go places more often, but we're working on it. All
yeah.
right.
Yeah. I'm so part of the reason why I am that was one of the topics we picked is because I haven't been comfortable in I've gone to drag shows and stuff, but I guess it's because I didn't understand it. I wasn't very comfortable, and then after meeting people and talking to them, I'm just like, wow, like there's so much more to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to share that, have that knowledge put out there so that other people can understand it.
Yeah, that's great. If you can let everybody know where they can follow you on the social medias things, we can wrap these things and think of your last words of grace, love, promise, whatever you want to put out there. What is something the last thing you want to leave our audience with?
All right. Well, you can follow me on IG at ShakiG underscore the underscore poet. Um, Again, with my advertisements, definitely go to The Word is Right, WRITE, events every day of the week. It's a great community. Um, I have a website, shakigpoetry.com, where you can see some of my videos, some of my slams, and also order my book if you so choose. Um, Aside from that, yes, yes, yes. It looks so great in your hands. Like I'm so excited. And I have to say, like Teresa, you're one of the people who, when I was just on YouTube, like watching poets, I saw your videos on button poetry, and like when I went to Java, and you were like, "Oh my god, I want you to come on my show!" Like I almost cried. I was like, "Oh my god!" Like fangirling. But so I'm very thankful that you had me on today.
Oh, thank
Um,
you so much for being here. No, so your final words of ta-da.
Life should be inspiring.
Life should be inspiring. I agree. Well, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you, audience in the Instagram. Where are we? The internet world. Thank you all so much for checking in. You can also come back and watch this video again on our our YouTube page at theartsexchange.org. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, audience. This has been the Power of Words author panel at the Arts Exchange. And y'all have the rest of a beautiful, beautiful day. And hydrate because we're all thirsty. Bye, Shaki G.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.